All right, so we're going to take the concept of cell shading a little step further and understand by applying it to a full form that when you're shading your characters and stuff like that, you still got to take into account that uh, they cast shadows on one another on the muscles, and that our shadows in our muscles in our form, even if it's not just muscles like this, if it's just um, um, even if they're wearing clothing, it casts an energy to it, a dynamics to it that just makes the characters feel like they're a little more dimensional and not like coloring books. And it's usually the penciler that's got to kind of figure this out. I've seen some inkers are able to figure it out, but you really don't want to kind of rely on that. You want to be in control of your drawings and kind of map that out. So we're going to say that the light source is coming from the other side, so that means everything on the inside here is going to be shaded. And so just like I've showed you guys with the cell shading, even if it's full figure, not the face, you understand that light is hitting here, and so there's going to be shadow on here. Now, one of the things that I've learned, and I kind of went through it too, is that you've spent all this time, getting this drawing right, and now you're covering it all up in black. Well, learn to love black. It's beautiful. It gives your drawings depth, and it allows them to pop off of the page and look more dimensional. So I'm blocking this out in some shadow. And so like so, I'm giving it some cell shading so I can block it out. And then here, the arm goes into the pectoralis. And so right under here, I'm going to give it that kind of secondary light source. Little lights hitting back there. And I'm going to shade this in as it goes around the rib cage. And immediately it goes from this linear kind of looking drawing to it's got some depth to it. And we'll go a little farther up here into the deltoid. Cell shade some of that out too. Put a little bit of it up here as well. That now starts having some depth and form. And so what you're really doing here is you're just kind of following the contours of what you already have drawn in your line work. And then I can come in with some feathering to kind of help round this out a little bit. When you're feathering, of course, it's thin lines for where the light is and goes thicker into your shadow. And like so. And like so. That now it's got some depth to it and some form to it. It looks more dimensional and not quite so flat. Rather, that when I can come in and I can fill that all in that I've shaded, cell shaded, I'll fill it in with black and feather it out in black as well. That now my character has some dimension to it, and this is going to apply as well to if he has clothing on, or it's just put the little vein in there too. It's going to be more on that side. It just gives a little more depth to it, and all you're doing is just following the contours. So, like for example, I've got my forearm muscle here. And so I'm just following the contours of that and wrapping it around. So if you think of it like, again, my sphere, if the light's coming from here, then I'm going to have a semicircle there. And it may go almost straight to the bottom because with the light is hitting it, light bounces off the surface of the ground and bounces back onto it. So you're going to get a secondary kind of light to it. But then I would cell shade that in, like so. And then I might feather it out a little bit to help kind of get the contours in. And then I might have my cast shadow. So all I did with this sphere was I just followed the contours that I had already. This line here, my shadow is this line here. You know, so my muscle was this line here, so I'm just following that contour around. And to get it, you know, as accurate as possible, it comes from study and comes from practice and things like that, of course. But the other thing of it is that art can be really, really forgiving as well. So if you pay attention to the craft and study the craft to try and get better as an illustrator, then they can forgive some of your mistakes as well. One of my favorite quotes from Jimi Hendrix, of all people, is that he used to remark that he had heard so many people emulating his style that he could hear them emulating his mistakes. And so, you know, you don't want to get too involved in emulating someone's style that you, of course, copy their mistakes as well. Make your own mistakes and make your own mistakes your style, so that it looks kind of say it looks close enough for government work, but the idea is still there and the principles are still there, and that's where it can be a little forgiving. And don't underestimate the untrained eye. The untrained eye has seen as many things as the trained eye has, and so it can point to something and say, that doesn't look right. And it comes from you've made a mistake in how to light something or shape something. So follow the contours of your drawing, cell shade it in, and then feather it out to give it roundness and depth. Realizing that where light hits, it's a thinner line on the outside, shaded on the other side of it. And but that's basically how we apply cell shading, feathering, and how we line weight. We apply it to full forms, not just faces.